You've seen them in the headlines, you've probably even seen the movie. Somali pirates. They became these almost mythical villains of the high seas, symbols of total chaos. But is that the whole story? Not even close. So let's dive into this thing because it is a wild ride, and it all kicks off with one hijacking that absolutely gripped the world.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's April 8th, 2009. We're out in the middle of the Indian Ocean. You've got the Maersk Alabama, a huge American cargo ship, and it's on a humanitarian mission, actually, heading to Kenya. It's about 440 kilometers off the Somali coast. Everything seems normal, but that's all about to change, and fast.
And then a blip pops up on the radar. It's just a small boat, but it's moving at over 25 knots. Now, a massive ship like the Alabama, it maxes out at maybe 18 knots. There's no way it can outrun this thing. The crew knows exactly what this is. They'd already dodged a couple of other boats, but this one is different. It's gaining on them way too fast.
The crew does everything they can think of, right? They're firing water hoses, trying these sharp, evasive turns, but it's no use. And then they hear it. The one sound that every single sailor in this part of the world absolutely dreads. It's this metallic clang as a ladder hooks right onto the side of their ship. They're on board.
And what's just incredible is how quickly this all goes down. We're talking 4 young pirates, armed with AK-47s, led by a kid who is only 18 years old, named Abdiwali Musi. They storm the bridge, they grab Captain Phillips, and they think, that's it, we've got the ship. But oh boy, did they underestimate the crew.
So while most of the crew is hiding down in a locked engine room, the chief engineer, a guy named Mike Perry, he gets an idea. He sets a trap. He actually ambushes the pirate leader, Musi, stabs him in the hand, and takes him hostage. And just like that, the whole situation is flipped on its head. Now you've got this insane standoff. The pirates have the captain, but the crew has the pirates leader.
So a super tense negotiation kicks off. The crew offers a deal. We'll trade you your leader for our captain, and we'll even give you a lifeboat to get away. But as Captain Phillips is showing them how to work the lifeboat, the pirates see their chance. They break the deal. They shove Captain Phillips into that lifeboat with them, and they take off, kidnapping him and kicking off this massive international crisis that, spoiler alert, is going to end with Navy SEAL snipers. So yeah, that whole dramatic saga really cemented this image of Somali pirates as these just ruthless, terrifying villains. But here's the thing. Back in Somalia itself, the story people were telling was completely, and I mean completely, different.
And that gets to the real question here, right? Who were these young guys in tiny little speedboats who were somehow taking on these gigantic container ships? Were they just criminals, pure and simple, chasing these million-dollar ransom payouts? Or was there something much, much deeper going on here?
And this, right here, is the heart of it. To the rest of the world, they were just criminals, a menace to global trade. But inside Somalia, a lot of people called them Badadenta Bahar, which means the saviors of the sea. In fact, a survey from around that time found that 70%, 70, of Somalis living on the coast actually supported piracy. They saw it as a kind of national defense. So how on earth is that possible?
Well, to understand the saviors of the sea, you first have to understand how Somalia as a nation completely fell apart. The real story of the pirates doesn't start on the ocean, it starts on land. Decades earlier was a total political collapse. So here's the quick and dirty history. Somalia gets its independence in 1960, falls into a dictatorship, and then in 1991, the whole government just evaporates. It collapses into a brutal civil war. And with no government, that means no navy, no coast guard, nothing. Somalia's huge, resource-rich coastline was suddenly one of the most undefended places on Earth. It was a total free-for-all. And into that power vacuum rushed 2 huge, devastating problems. First, you had huge international fishing fleets showing up and just illegally plundering Somali waters. We're talking $300 million worth of seafood stolen every single year. And second, something way more sinister. Foreign companies started using the coast as a cheap dumping ground for toxic, even nuclear waste. And this is where the math gets really, really ugly. For a European company to illegally dump 1 ton of toxic waste off the coast of Somalia, you know how much it cost them? As little as $2.50. Now contrast that with what it would have cost them to dispose of that exact same waste legally and safely back in Europe, about $1,000 a ton. The financial incentive to just dump it and poison someone else's backyard was absolutely massive.
And it gets even worse. This whole thing became known as guns for waste. These foreign companies would literally make deals with local warlords. They'd trade weapons in exchange for permission to dump their poison. So this toxic trade wasn't just polluting the coast, it was actively arming the very people who were tearing the country apart.
So you can imagine, you're a fisherman, right? Your fish are being stolen. Your waters are being poisoned. What do? Well, at first, they banded together. They acted like a volunteer Coast Guard, trying to chase off these illegal ships. But what started as defense very quickly turned into a highly organized and, incredibly profitable business.
And that's the key thing to understand. This wasn't just random attacks. It became a slick operation. You'd have one team for the attack, the guys in the speedboat, they'd seize the ship and sail it to a friendly port. And then a whole other team would take over. Investors, translators, negotiators. They'd handle the ransom, which was often just airdropped in a waterproof container, and only after the cash was counted would they let the ship go. And if you follow the money, it really tells the story. The guys on the boat, the actual pirates taking all the risk, they only got about half the cut. A full third of the ransom money went to investors, the people who fronted the cash for the boats, the fuel, the weapons. The rest went to a whole support network on the ground. It was a real business. By 2011, this pirate business model was costing the global economy something like $7 billion a year. And at that point, the world basically said, okay, that's enough. A massive international coalition came together to take back the seas. And the results were, frankly, stunning. Look at these numbers. At the peak in 2011, you had 237 attacks. The very next year, it drops to 75. A year after that, just 15. And then for years from 2017 to 2023, successful hijackings basically dropped to 0. So how'd they do it? Well, it was a bunch of things all at once. You had international Navy patrols. Ships started upgrading their defenses with things like barbed wire and building safe rooms for the crew to hide in. But the number one single biggest game changer, putting armed security guards on the ships themselves. In fact, not a single ship with armed guards on board has ever been successfully hijacked by Somali pilots. Ever.
So the attacks stopped. Problem solved, right? Well, not exactly. The story doesn't end there. Because while the world did a great job of treating the symptom, the piracy, it never really did anything about the disease, the illegal fishing, the toxic waste, the poverty, all the things that started this in the first place.
And now we're seeing what happens when you don't fix the root cause. In late 2023, with all those international navies distracted by the Houthi conflict over in Yemen, the patrols got thin. And what happened? The pirates saw their opening. After years of nothing, they're back. And they've already successfully hijacked several ships. The opportunity returned because, well, the desperation had never really left.
Which leaves us with this really tough question. The story of the Somali pirates, it started as a revolt against a very real injustice. People stealing their food and poisoning their water. But it turned into a criminal enterprise that terrorized innocent sailors. And it makes you wonder, at what point does a fight for justice become an injustice itself? Something to think about.